Clients that come to you for a service may want to change the curliness or straightness of their hair to achieve a certain look. Sometimes a client will want a style that is not possible with the natural wave pattern. Chemical texture service, such as permanent waving, curl reformation, and relaxer chemical change that hair natural wave pattern of existing hair growth. For example, a permanent wave can be used to permanently change a client's straight hair to a curl texture, and clients with a naturally over curly hair may straighten their hair by having it chemically relaxed. When new hair growth occurs, retouch applications are required to maintain the altered texture and structure of the hair. Chemical texture services are practical, versatile, and lucrative services that provide clients with an alternative haircut design and style. Chemical textures are services that use chemicals to change the natural straightness or curliness of the hair into a new wave pattern. Permanent or chemical waving is a process used to chemically restructure natural hair into a different wave pattern. Most permanent waving services are performed to change straight or wavy hair into curly hair. Permanent waving increases the fullness of fine, softer hair, redirects resistant growth patterns until new growth occurs, provides greater styling control. Permanent waving requires permanent wave rods, end papers, thiol-based waving lotions, neutralizers, chemical hair relaxer. Chemical rearranges the basic structure of overly curly hair into a straighter hair form. The relaxing process includes a chemical relaxer, a neutralizer. A properly performed chemical relaxing service should leave the hair in a soft, relaxed form that can be wet set, wrapped, or thermal styled. A curl reformation, also known as a soft curl perm, or simply a curl, is a process used to restructure very curly hair into large curl patterns. Curl reformation service requires a thiol-based relaxing product to partly straighten the hair, permanent wave rods, end papers, thiol-based wrap, neutralizers, hair moisturizers / conditioners. A curl reformation is a combination of a thiol-based chemical relaxer and a permanent wave. Chemical texturizing services require maintenance and periodic reapplications as a new growth appears. The barber who develops the ability to perform chemical texture services has additional skills to establish a loyal following of satisfied clients, repeat customers, and new referrals. The constellation with the client takes only a few minutes, but it is time well spent. It helps establish your credibility as a professional, inspires the client's confidence, make the entire chemical texture service experience more satisfying for both the client and the barber. Open communication between the barber and the client helps assure a successful chemical texture service outcome. This can be accomplished by asking open-ended questions to determine a client's desired past experience with texture services. Discuss these topics: the desired hairstyle and the amount of curl or straightening. Pictures, magazines, and style books can help figure out what the client likes and dislikes. The current type of condition of the client's hair. Can what the client desired be achieved on their hair considering the current conditions and type of hair they have? The client's lifestyle. Do they have leisure time or a demanding schedule that requires a low maintenance style? How the hairstyle relates to overall personal image. It is the clients concerned about the current fashion trends. Previous experience. Was the last chemical texture service satisfactory? If not, what were the problems? Keep the information learned during the consultation in the form of a written record that includes the client's address and home and business contact information. In addition to the client's desires, the barber also needs to have a clear understanding of what the finished style will look like. This is key to successful texture service because the desired finished look will help determine the degree of curl or relaxation that is needed. Before proceeding with the chemical texture service, it is important to carefully analyze the client's scalp and hair conditions. The analyzation should be used to determine whether the scalp and hair should receive a chemical texture service and the types of products to be used. The scalp should be examined for cuts, abrasions, open sores, scalp disease. Any of these conditions can make a chemical process uncomfortable and dangerous to a client. Do not proceed the service if abrasions of signs of scalp disease are present. Refer to the client to a physician as necessary. The hair analyst includes observing and determining the hair's porosity, texture, elasticity, density, length, direction of growth. How does porosity affect chemical texturizing service? The process time for chemical texturizing service depends on hair porosity than other factors. Generally, the more porous the hair, the less processing time. The porosity level of the hair determines the speed which moisturizers will be absorbed into the hair and indirectly related to the condition of the cuticle layer. Hair porosity is classified as a resistant, normal, porous. These classifications help determine the most appropriate strength of a chemical product to use at different hair types. Resistant hair has a tight, compact cuticle layer that resists penetration of chemical solution. This hair type requires more alkaline solution to raise the cuticle permanent, uniform saturation and processing. Normal porosity means that the hair is neither resistant nor overly porous. Chemical texture service performed on these types will usually process as expected. Porous hair has a raised cuticle layer that easily absorbs chemical solution. This hair requires less alkaline solutions to help prevent damage to the hair. Do not proceed with the service if the hair shows signs of breakage or overporosity. To accurately test the porosity level, start by using these 4 different areas. At the front hairline, temple, near the crown, nape. Grab some strands of dry hair. Hold the ends firmly with the thumb and index finger of one hand and slide the fingers of the other hand from the end towards the scalp. The fingers do not slide easily or if the hair ruffles as if the fingers slid down the strands and the hair is porous. The more ruffles form, the more porous the hair. The fewer ruffles that form, the less porous it is. If the fingers slide easily and no ruffles are formed, the cuticle layers lie close to the hair shaft. This type of hair is the least porous in most residents and may require longer processing time. Keep in mind the porosity may be different from the base area to the ends of the hair, and drastically differently, the client may need to produce a product such as a light spray moisturizer to even out the porosity before proceeding with the service. Hair texture. How does hair texture affect the chemical texturizing service? While hair porosity is important in determining the processing time, hair texture also plays a part in this decision. For example, coarse, porous hair will usually process faster than fine, resident hair. Hair texture describes the diameter of a single strand of hair as it being coarse, medium, or fine. Coarse hair usually requires more processing than medium or fine hair and may also be more resistant to chemical processes. Medium hair is the most common hair texture. It is considered normal and does not usually pose any special processing problems. Fine hair typically more fragile, easier to process, and more suitable to damage from chemical services. Generally, fine hair will process faster and more easily than medium or coarse hair types. Hair elasticity. How does hair elasticity affect chemical texturizing service? Hair elasticity is an important factor to consider because it indicates the strength of the cross bonds in the hair. The greater the degree of elasticity, the longer the wave will remain in the hair because lax relaxation of the hair occurs. Thus, the elasticity of the hair determines its ability to hold a curl. Hair elasticity is classified as normal or low. Normal elasticity is indicated by wet hair that can stretch up to 50% of its original length and return to that length without breaking. Hair with normal elasticity usually holds the curl from wet sets and permanent wave. Low elasticity indicates by wet hair that does not return to its original length when stretched and may not be able to hold a curl pattern. To test for elasticity, take a few strands of damp hair. Hold them between the thumb and forefinger of each hand. Slowly stretch the strands between your fingers. The more they can stretch without breaking, the more elasticity the hair has. If the elasticity is good, the hair slowly contracts after stretching. Hair with poor elasticity will break quickly and easily when stretched. Signs of poor elasticity includes limpness, sponginess, and hair that tangles easily. Generally speaking, such as hair with not developed a firm, strong wave and may result in breakage. There are special waving solutions available for hair with poor elasticity. If you use a combination with a smaller diameter rod, it may result in a satisfactory permanent wave or curl reformation process. Hair density. How does hair density affect chemical texturizing services? Hair density measures the numbers of hair per square inch, indicates how thick or thin the hair is. Think of walking through a forest that has many trees. The forest is very dense and it is difficult to walk through. On the other hand, think about walking across a field with very few trees. The field is very not dense. Hair density is important to consider when performing chemical texture services because it determines the number of blocking or subsections that will be best for the service that is performed. For example, permanent waving solutions, smaller blocks, and larger rods may require for thick density hair. If the hair density is thin, however, smaller diameter rods are required to form a good wave pattern close to the head. Avoid large blocking on thin hair growth and permanent waves as strain may cause breakage. And chemical relaxing subsections may need to be very small according to the density for proportion saturation. Hair density can also indicate the amount of product that will be needed. If a client has a lot of hair, more product may be needed. Hair length. How does your hair length affect chemical texturizing services? In permanent waving and curl reformation process, hair length may determine the wrapping technique to use. For example, while hair of average length may be wrapped normally, hair that is 6 inches or longer may not sit close enough to the scalp to develop a good strong wave pattern in that area. In addition, the weight of long hair may relax or stretch the curl to the extent that the majority of the wave pattern remain mid-shift and on the hair ends with a very little lift in the scalp area. Like hair density, the length of the hair will also help determine the amount of product that will help be needed for the chemical texturizing process. For example, clients with long hair may require additional waving solution, relaxer, or neutralizer to complete the process. Hair growth patterns. How does hair growth patterns affect chemical texturizing services? The growth of the natural hair growth creates hair steams, whorls, and cowlicks that can influence the finished style and appearing at a new growth occurs. The direction of the hair growth may be considered when selecting the wrapping pattern and rod placement for permanent wave or curl reformation and for the direction of combing and smoothing the using chemical relaxer. When wrapping a permanent wave or curl reformation, wrapping in the opposite direction of a strong growth pattern may cause breakage. Texturizer services create permanent changes in the structure of the appearance of the hair. As you learned earlier, hair is composed of 3 layers: cuticle, cortex, and medulla. Medulla, because of the medulla, is considered to be empty space and may be present only in the median and coarse hair types. The cuticle and cortex are 2 layers most affected by chemical texture. The cuticle is the tough outermost layer that protects the cortex from damage. The degree to which the hair is resistant to chemical changes depends on the strength of the cuticle. The alkaline solutions and substances used in chemical texture services softens and swells the cuticle, allowing for penetration into the cortex. The cortex gives the hair its strength, flexibility, elasticity, and shape. These characteristics are derived from the millions of polypeptide chains found in the keratin that makes up the cortex of the hair. Restructuring keratin and polypeptide chains in the cortex, as you learned earlier, amino acids form proteins, and chemical reactions among proteins produce peptide linkages. Hair develops and maintains its natural form by means of the physical and chemical cross bonds in the cortex layer. The physical bonds, hydrogen and salt, are weaker bonds and are easily broken by shampooing and rinsing. Chemical bonds are broken or rearranged through the chemical use in permanent waving, curl, reformation, and relaxers. Alkaline substances used in chemical texture products break the chemical bonds and allow for a softening expansion of the hair. During this process, cysteine is altered slightly to become cysteine. Cysteine is an amino acid obtained by the reduction of the cysteine. This chemical action is important because it changes the chemical rearranges of the inner structure of the hair as it assumes a new shape and form. For example, in permanent waving and curl reformation, the hair will take shape and curl form of the perm rod. In relaxing, the naturally curly hair is relaxed into a straighter, less curly form as a manual smooth. After the hair assumes the desired shape, it must be neutralized so that the hydrogen and sulfide cross bonds in the cortex layer are permanently reformed. Cysteine is changed back to the cysteine state during the process of oxidation and neutralization, which hardens the S bonds of the hair into the newly constructed shape. Both physical and chemical actions causes the bonds within the cortex to be rearranged and restructured during chemical texturizing services. Chemical texturizing services involve 2 principal actions on the hair: physical and chemical. Permanent waving is a process that involves 2 principal actions on the hair: physical action of wrapping the hair on the perm rods, chemical changes caused by the waving solutions and neutralizer. Permanent waves are performed on the hair that has been freshly shampooed and uniform damped. A spray bottle must be used to maintain even wetness throughout the hair during the wrapping procedure. In permanent waving, the size, shape, and type of curl are determined by the size, shape, and type of perm rod and the method used to wrap the hair. The size and shape of the rod determines the size of the curl. The proper selection of perm rod is essential for successful permanent waving. The most common used rod are made of plastic. Perm rod diameter. The diameter of the rod controls the size of the curl. These diameters usually vary from 1/8 inch to 1.5 inches. The hair is used in subsections must be wrapped at least 1.5 times around the rod to create a curl form. Perm rod lengths. Rods are available in lengths that typically measure from 1/3/4 inch to 3.5 inches. Perm rods lengths are known as short, medium, long. Concave rods are most commonly used perm rods. Concave rods have a smaller diameter in the center, which gradually increases to a larger diameter at both ends. This shape produces a tight curl in the center and a large curl on the sides of the hair parting, resulting in a more natural wave. Concave rods are used when a definite wave pattern close to the head is desired. Straight rods have a uniform circumference and diameter along the rod ends. This type of rod creates a consistency size wave from one side of the hair parting to the other. Large straight rods are usually used for a body wave that serves as a foundation for further styling. Bender rods are made of stiff wire covered by soft foam and permits bending into a variety of shapes. These rods measure about 12 inches in length and have a uniform diameter. The circle tool or loop rod is a plastic coated tool that also measures about 12 inches from uniform diameter along the length of the rod. These rods are secured by fastening the ending together to form a circle. End wraps are absorbed papers used to control the end of the paper wrapping and winding of the hair on perm rods. End papers should extend beyond the ends of the hair to keep them smooth and straight, and to prevent fish hooks. A fish hook is a flaw in the wrapping that results in the tip of the hair bending in the opposite direction so that the rest can curl. End papers are especially effective in helping to smooth out wrapping on uneven hair lengths. For even, uneven lengths, you may use multiple end wraps. Use the hair strands to control the hair. The most common end paper wrapping techniques are bookend wraps, the single flat wrap, and double flat wrap. The bookend wrap uses one paper folded in half over the ends of the hair. It can be used in short rods or short lengths of hair. Be careful to distribute the hair evenly over the entire length of the rod and avoid bunching the ends together toward the center of the rod. The single flat or single end wrap uses one paper placed over the top of the hair parting being wrapped. Because there is a paper on only side of the hair, it may be difficult to control the hair using this method. The double flat or double end wrap uses two end papers, one placed under and one over the parting of hair being wrapped. Both papers should extend beyond the hair ends. Hooking wrap mini procedure. Parting the comb subsection up and out until all the hair is evenly directed and disputed. Hold the subsections between the index fingers and middle fingers, fold and place the end papers over the subsections, forming an envelope. Hold the subsections smoothly and evenly. Slide the paper envelope small fraction beyond the hair ends. With your right hand, pick up the rods. Place the rod under the folded end papers parallel to parting. Draw the end papers and rod toward the hair ends until they are visible above the rod, and start winding the end papers and hair under toward the scalp. Wind the hair smoothly without tension on the rod. Fasten the band evenly across the wool hair at the top of the rod. Single flat wrap mini procedure. Place the end paper on top of the subsection and hold it flat to prevent bunching. Place the rod under the subsection, holding it parallel with the parting. Then draw the end paper and rod downward until the hair ends are covered. Roll the end paper and subsection under using the thumb of each hand to keep the strand smooth. Wind the subsection on the rod to scalp without tension. Fasten the band across the top of the rod in the same manner as the bookend paper wrap. Double flat wrap mini procedure. Place one end paper beneath the hair subsection and the other on top. Place the rod under double end papers parallel with the parting. Draw both papers towards the hair ends. Wind the subsection smoothly on the rod to the scalp without tension. Then fasten the band across the top of the rod in the same manner as the bookend wrap. elastic band secures the hair and the rod into desired position to prevent the curl from unwinding during the procedure. Sectioning. Perm wraps begin with sectioning the hair into panels. The size, shape, and direction of these panels will vary depending on the wrapping pattern and the type of tool being used. Each panel is further divided into subsections called base sections. The base sections are actually patterns taken from the subsection that measures almost the same length and width at the rod and permanent tool. The number of base sections and the rod sizes will vary with the client depending on the sectioning pattern used and the texture, density, and elasticity of the hair. The average base section or parting should length be slightly shorter than the length of the rod. If the rod is shorter than the length of the blocking, the hair will slip off the ends of the rod during winding and result in an uneven curl formation. The texture, elasticity, porosity, and condition of the client's hair all help determine how the hair should be sectioned and subsectioned, which rod to use, and where the application of waving solution should begin. Be guided by your instructor.